Hey, this is David Plotz, CEO of CityCast. I have a favor to ask before we get to today's conversation. We're doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help us out if you took it. And even if you took it last year, we'd be grateful if you took it again, because we can't use last year's data. Please go to citycast.fm/survey to take the survey. It's only 7 minutes long, we know, because we timed it. That's citycast.fm/survey. And when you take the survey, you'll also be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and CityCast swag, that great CityCast swag. citycast.fm/survey.
I don't know about y'all, but I love learning new things, and the Newberry Library is a perfect place for your curiosity. Adult education has been a tradition at the Newberry since the 1890s. The classes are led by experts, and they're available in person and online. Take a writing workshop, study the history of flamenco, make your own book plate, and so much more. Register at newberry.org. Just click on Learn an Adult Education class to get started. Plus, enter promo code CityCast to get a 10% discount on your next class. That's CityCast, all one word. Today on CityCast Chicago. In just 4 weeks, residents in Dalton will be voting for mayor. And I'm here to tell you that this small South suburban election is probably one of the wildest political stories in Illinois right now, which for us is saying something. I'm talking allegations of financial mismanagement, blatant retaliation, a recall, court battles, all surrounding current Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Well, we're talking with the reporter who's been following this story very closely. It's Monday, January 27th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. NBC5's Regina Waldrop has been investigating the unraveling of Dalton's politics and the self-proclaimed super mayor Tiffany Henyard. Regina, thank you for joining us here at CityCast Chicago.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Dalton, Illinois is only about 20 miles south of Chicago and is in the Thornton Township, one of 29 townships in Cook County. I grew up spending a lot of time in Dalton. I had family members who lived there, a lot of homies who went to schools throughout the area. Regina, you've been reporting the unraveling of what's been happening in the township. But first, can you describe the village of Dalton for our listeners, and what is the community largely like?
It's a small suburban community, mostly African American. My parents, they bought a house near there in Harvey. It was affordable. It was safe. People from the Great Migration, a lot of them settled in the Dalton, Harvey, Riverdale area because, again, it was affordable. There were jobs. If you worked in Gary or you worked in nearby, it was a great place to live. And that's what my parents were looking for. They wanted to get out of the city. They lived on the west side when I was a kid, and they wanted somewhere to raise their kids. Harvey's right next to Dalton. And so I think of them as one of the same. The only problem with Dalton, though, and Harvey and a lot of those south suburbs, they suffer from a lack of large factories or some large resource, and so the property taxes are out the roof. Even as a reporter, it's hard for me just to, I have to fight just to be able to cover the south suburbs, and that's where I grew up at. It's a fight to just be able to, bring some attention to those communities that need some attention.
Over the decades, even just in my life, we've seen grocery stores disappear. We saw shopping malls disappear. And so for many who maybe left the city or whose family settled in the south suburbs because they were able to afford a home, haven't been able to reap a lot of the promises as disinvestment has doubled and tripled down over the last few years.
Correct. Yeah.
As politicians have been asked to sort of step in and provide refuge, provide new ideas, innovative ideas, we end up with an individual like Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Can you tell us, who is this mayor?
She is the youngest and the first African-American woman to head Dalton. She grew up in the area. A lot of people say that she had these great ideas. Before she was mayor, she was a Dalton trustee for several years. And then a lot of people who supported her, they said she had some really great ideas.
She was a trustee for 8 years, starting back in 2013,
right.
Had worked in Illinois politics in some fashion. Like you said, born and raised in Dalton, went to Thornridge, went to Robert Morris at one point. So there was a lot of trust, a lot of investment in her community. What did she promise the people of Dalton during her campaign?
She promised them a lot. She was going to bring stores to Dalton. She was going to bring jobs, and a lot of older people really like her because she had promised that she was going to really help a lot of the older residents who live there. And so that was a selling point for them. She was going to your house. She was knocking on doors. She was a very friendly person. That's what when you meet a lot of older people, that's what they tell me. She's a nice young lady. I love her. She came to my house. She brought me groceries. She is a good person. There's a lot of older individuals will ask me, why am I out there reporting on this? Why am I doing this to her? And I'm not doing anything. And that's what I come back with them. I'm just covering the story as it unfolds.
I mean, at a time in which people are looking for leaders who might have more personality, who are talking about putting up a fight for their community, for their neighborhood. And again, somebody who is saying, I'm going to fight for a disinvested village, one that is often overlooked by maybe they feel from Chicago, from the larger state of Illinois. How soon after she was named mayor in 2021, like you said, how soon after she was elected did concerns and questions start being raised?
From all the residents that I've spoken with and the trustees, within the first 6 months, things started going downhill the first 6 months. She immediately takes office and says, I'm going to do things a little different. I'm going to do things my way. And so it's a gradual downhill, a spiral. But everyone I talked to says that within 6 months of her taking office, they knew it was the wrong decision.
Regina, during the documentary, some people said that as early as the day she was inaugurated into office, people had questions. How much money was spent just on maybe that one celebration?
According to one of the trustees, well over $12,000.
To put your hand on the Bible and say, I'm gonna hold things down?
Right, but I always ask, what did the money go towards? It's a little unclear. Like $12,000 in a small community for an inauguration.
In 2022, Mayor Henyard also became the supervisor of the Thornton Township, 17 different communities. How did this happen? Because this is a completely separate leadership position. Is it common for a mayor to hold a dual position like this?
From what I understand, it's not illegal, but to me, it's in the state of Illinois, but it seems like double dipping. Frank Zuccarelli was the longtime township supervisor. He died in office. And so from what I understand, there was a late night vote and she got appointed to that position of township supervisor. And from everything that I've been told, it is legal for her to hold those two positions.
And I think that is where the super mayor title comes from supervisor.
That's right. Mayor, supervisor, put them together, super mayor.
You talk about in those first 6 months, concerns being raised. Let's break it down. When she says she was going to do things differently, what are some of the changes she made that residents and trustees did not favor?
Well, I guess when it came to the village board meetings, she moved the portion where residents get to speak. She moved that first. And then, as they were speaking, she would ignore them. She wouldn't really listen to them. She'd have her head down. And then trustees, I guess, were trying to get things answered or questions answered, and they were getting nowhere.
You out of order. You out of order. Did I call the roll? Did I say call the roll? I'm still speaking. You're out of order, Clerk Key. You out of order, Clerk Key. Stop. Y'all out of order. Everybody want to run stuff. Y'all don't run this house over here. Stop, please.
And so I guess that was the big thing is trustees couldn't, they had questions and they couldn't get answers. And I think you need to work with your board, right? I mean, you want to be a cohesive unit, I would think. I mean, not that they have to agree with you or go lockstep with you. Of course, there's going to be some disagreements.
But our goal in the city is for Mayor Johnson and the city council to be working in some efforts to move this city forward, to have a cohesive agenda on things like affordable housing, on mental health, on things like safety in the city. And the same is true of Dalton. People want their mayor and their trustees to work together because for them, their trustees are essentially their city council. You talk about the comment section being moved. Not only was it moved, but it went from a very interactive, you can ask questions, we'll answer them, whether it's about the meeting, whether about things on your block, to what essentially over time became a much more, I'm not saying combative in the sense that residents came there simply to fight or anything, but they, like you said, they were put up there simply to give a statement, but there was no recourse. There were no questions being answered. And to be talking to a mayor who is looking down, writing on their phone, has to be disheartening for residents. What did you hear from people who attended these meetings?
Well, I've covered a lot of village board meetings, city council meetings, but I've never seen one as packed as Dalton, as those meetings, because, the people care. They want to be heard. They have valid things that they want things paid attention to. And so not only are they ignored, but then it's very, the police come, you got to walk through a metal detector. If you speak out, I'm going to have you arrested. I mean, it's so disheartening because these residents just want some answers. They want help, and to have it so, I've never been to a meeting like that where the police, they're waiting right there. You can't say a word, or you're going to get arrested. How is that the village working for me? Mm-hmm. We put you in office, aren't you? You work for the people, right?
Yeah, watching the documentary and seeing the way officers were deputized by the mayor and really used to corral people in meetings, to kick people out for simple disagreements, for simple debates. Now, obviously, this situation has gotten outside of just the Dalton village. What have Illinois officials said, the attorney general, the governor?
So even before as soon as I came in to cover this, residents had already tried to get some help. I mean, I've seen letters to Kwame Raoul, the governor. All of these residents had already spearheaded this writing campaign. They were like, we got to do something. But then there's a recall effort. So she actually, a number of voters voted to recall her, but it was thrown out of court because a judge said that the questions were too confusing for voters to understand. Just last year, we asked Governor Pritzker, what do you do? What do you say about what's happening in Dalton?
The federal authorities, as you may know, are involved and investigating. There is an investigation that's been called for, and now I know there was a veto that was overridden that will now allow that investigation to go forward with former Mayor Lori Lightfoot in charge of that. I think that those are two pretty good authorities for looking into this, investigating it, and getting to the truth.
If you like me, then you're trying to get out and explore all of Chicago's museums in 2025. So add the Claremont Collections Automotive Museum to your list now. Low-key, it's Chicago's only automotive museum where you can learn about everything from horseless carriages to modern muscle cars. Plus, the vehicles regularly rotate, so you get a unique experience with each visit. They're also open for school field trips, and they have a private event space that seats up to 200 people. I'm talking birthdays, weddings, quinceañeras, and other special events. So take advantage of that free parking. Make 2025 extraordinary with 50% off annual memberships throughout February. Visit Wednesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and discover over 300 vintage and classic vehicles at Chicago's most spectacular automotive museum. Experience the magic of Claremont Collections Automotive Museum whenever you want. Please don't let this opportunity slip away. Secure your discounted membership at ClaremontCollections.com today.
Do you plan your vacations based on whether you can speak the local language? With Babbel, language no longer has to be the barrier. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I went to Mexico City a couple of years ago with my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker. So I just let her do all the talking, like all of it. I adored the city, and now I'm going to go back in a couple of months, but with my college roommates, who are a bunch of middle-aged men, none of us Spanish speakers. When I was younger, I might not have been bold enough to do that, but now I'm not anxious because Babbel has me covered. Thanks to Babbel, I know how to order a taxi, how to give directions, how to order in a restaurant, all the small and useful bits of language that make international travel easier. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, especially of the sort you need while traveling. Food, how to get places. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. So I hope I'll see you in Mexico in a couple of months. Or, as we say, espero verte en Mexico en un par de meses. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Okay. So to recap, Henyard is elected as Dalton mayor in 2021. People start complaining almost immediately, having questions about her spending. Then in 2022, she also takes over as township supervisor, which, again, 2 full-time leadership positions. So the complaining gets louder. There's a recall vote that the courts eventually throw out. But I suspect for a lot of Chicagoans, they really started tuning into this story last year when Dalton trustees hire former Chicago mayor Lori Lightfoot, of all people, to investigate Henyard. So why did they eventually bring Lori Lightfoot in?
I think Vegas had a lot to do with it. You know, there was a taxpayer-funded trip in May of 2023 to Las Vegas. The mayor's former assistant says on that trip she was assaulted by an elected official who also went on that trip. And so we reached out to the mayor for a statement about this as we were doing our work, and the mayor's PR firm sent us a statement saying this was a disgruntled employee and that her office had conducted a third-party investigation and with former police officers who had nothing to do with the village. And so I asked the trustees, I asked the majority of them, had they ever heard of this third-party investigation? And they said no. And if there was a third-party investigation, they would have had to approve it. So part of that was Lori really was brought in to look into that, but also any alleged mismanagement of funds. But I really believe that it was the what happened in Vegas really got things moving along.
What was that investigation period like up to this point, and what were some of Lightfoot's findings?
Some of the Lightfoot findings were, at one point, the village did have a surplus. Now it's in the red. 6 credit cards. We don't know who's using these credit cards. Several charges on Amazon in one day. One total up to $40,000. And so when she presents this at the village board meeting, there's gasps in the audience because it's packed in there, and everybody's saying, well, who could have bought 40,000 of what at Amazon? And then somebody said, maybe it's a tiny house. We don't know. But I mean, Lori, that was one of the major findings that she had. And she'll be coming back, I hear, in a few weeks with more of her investigation, because it didn't end there. It's still going on.
How have residents reacted to some of the findings in the investigation, particularly a $3.5 million deficit?
At that meeting where Lori, where she goes over the dollar figures, I mean, like I said, that meeting was packed. It was at the park. She was packed, and you heard gasps. You heard, people are in disbelief.
We want to highlight a couple of credit card purchases. You're having the same reaction that we did when we saw it.
And they want to know, where was the money used? What was it used for? And I guess there's a lot of worry, too. And Lori mentioned this a little bit, possibly of commingling of funds with the village and the township. Now, the township, is solid right now. And so residents who live in those 17 communities are worried, what is happening with our tax dollars then? Are the monies being commingled? With the township, there was a line item that kept coming up for this person named Brandon. And he kept coming up. It was a line item kept coming up. And somebody gave me a tip and said, that's her stylist. And so I reached out to him and said, yeah. He said, I'm her stylist, absolutely. And it was, it was a significant dollar figure, but they had it not listed in the township budget as a stylist. It was listed as something else. And then I got a statement saying, oh, he also did this too, but he's her stylist, and he's on the tax rolls. So Thornton Township residents are paying for her stylist. And, there are a lot of businesses who are suing right now too. I've got one just contacted me because they can't get business licenses. I talked to one guy. He bought a small business. He wanted to open a barbershop in Dalton. Could never get a business license. And he said that somebody in her administration told him that she wasn't going to give him a license because she wanted that property. It seems like every week there's a different lawsuit. I've got another business. They can't get a business license. Then how do we move Dalton forward if these businesses that want to do better, want to bring the community up, can't even get a business license to operate?
So at this point, the mayor is sitting under allegations of covering up an alleged assault. and not taking proper precautions there, and then ultimately firing her former assistant, spending tens and tens of thousands of the village money for being petty and holding grudges against board trustees. How has the mayor responded to all of these, not only allegations, but also this lack of cohesion inside of the village and a larger township?
Well, when it comes to the village, most of the times at the meeting, she'll blame the trustees. She'll lash out at them or the residents, and there's a lot of back and forth. But she does say she's going to get reelected again. You know, she has said that she's just like President Trump got reelected. She says she's going to get reelected again.
She doesn't just say she's going to get reelected. She says she's going to sweep both seats. And then there's this sense, it's very Trumpian in the sense that there's this like, not only are y'all gonna have to watch it happen, but y'all gonna have to deal with the consequences afterwards. Like, I'm coming for you when I get back.
Well, I guess we'll have to see what happens in February and April. But I think that she is still sitting on in her power positions and thinking she's going to be successessl come the election.
Virginia, you've covered so many elected officials during your time, and our area it's not new to having arrogant politicians who throw their power and their weight around. But have you ever seen anything quite like this outside of the situation? Because when I watch some of these meetings, I remember just like sitting in my room after like a basketball or a football game will go off, and like the news will come up, and it's the first thing. And not only the emotion you see from residents, but like just how little she either cares about the reaction she's getting or how spiteful she is in her commentary towards trustees and residents. Have you ever seen anything like this in your time?
No, because sometimes, she'll laugh, or there's back and forth between, and no, I've never seen it. Like in covering a lot of meetings, most meetings, I'm going to be honest with you, most village board, most township meetings are kind of boring. But on the same note, it's really sad because I always say, on the losing end are the residents, the people who live there. They are on the losing end. And so, people sometimes think it's funny, it's a joke, Dalton, ha ha ha, and I'm like, it's not a joke though, because these are people's livelihoods. These are retired people. I meet who moved there. This is their home, and that people are laughing about it. It's the laughing stock, and it shouldn't be. Keep in mind again, some people are Team Tiffany, so I'm not going to say everybody feels sad. There are people who are Team Tiffany. I talked to her former high school teacher. He's at a lot of the meetings. Again, he asked me, why am I doing this? Why am I out there? Why are you covering this? Her boyfriend once, they invited me to a meeting as she tries to get back on the ballot for Thornton Township. It was a kind of a rally meeting for her supporters in late November. And I go to this meeting. I'm the only reporter. And her boyfriend, he lays in on me. And he says, don't forget you're black. You're black. She said that to me before meetings too. You as a black woman need to be, we need to be uplifting each other, not you covering this story. These are federal documents. These are federal subpoenas. I'm not making anything up. We do know those subpoenas were issued. And those subpoenas, they were looking for records for businesses she's involved with, that her boyfriend's involved with, records for employees.
And I've watched as her and her supporters who have the right to go hard in support of their mayor, their candidate. And I've watched them say time and time again in the meetings that if she were not a black woman, this would not be happening. If she were a white politician, people would look the other way. And I'm not here to say that isn't entirely true, but what I am here to say is that Dalton is largely made up of black residents. And I'm seeing in these interviews, residents who've been here for 10, 20, 30 years, who've raised kids and grandkids, and who are saying, I feel like I'm being gaslit right now. I am being gaslit right now with this argument, because I'm simply asking you to do right by us. Voters in Dalton will head to polls in February for the primary election. Hilliard announced in October that she is running for re-election. She was kicked off of the Democratic ticket for the Thornton Township supervisor, but she sounds confident.
Do right in. I don't know. She's confident and she's going to be on that ticket. So we'll see.
And she's confident she'll also keep her seat as mayor. Dalton just had its first board meeting of the year. I've seen a lot of reporting that some trustees aren't showing up, that they aren't able to get business done. What does present day meetings look like?
Well, see, I think you've got the township confused with the village board. So village board, the trustees do show up for the village board. She didn't show up at the last meeting. The first meeting of the year, she did not show up there. She said there were some threats made against her. The trustees said that was not true. They went on with the meeting because Jason House is mayor pro tem. Now, Thornton Township, what I understand is no trustees showed up. And so she just showed up and she said a few words. No Thornton Township trustees showed up. So from what I understand, they're without insurance. They still don't have a budget for Thornton Township. We're going, the years, 2024 is over. There's no spending plan. So, nothing's getting done.
I know there may be people who are listening who are residents of Dalton, who have family there, and are hoping that after this election, they can start to put this behind them. We do not know. But when we're thinking about mayor, we're thinking about township supervisor. Who are her major opponents, the people who are hoping to defeat her, and what are they promising residents?
Well, Jason House is running for mayor also in the village of Dalton. I've interviewed him several times, talked to him. He seems to be willing to work with the board, but also he seems to be willing to listen to residents. He knows that I think that if he becomes mayor, he says, or his promise is that he will listen to residents, he will work with his board, and I think they're going to hold him accountable. When it comes to the Thornton Township, Napoleon Harris, he got the nomination for township supervisor. And I think there's a Republican also running as well for township supervisor. So, it is a Democratic stronghold.
Are there any, as you know right now, any sense that any broader criminal charges may actually be coming coming down the pike at any point?
I get asked that a lot. Everybody was like, well, why? Why isn't the subpoenas were issued? Why haven't the feds done something? Why haven't the feds done something? That's a great question. From what I understand, the wheels of justice turn slow. That's all I understand. And also, I guess the feds, they like a solid case, right? They want a solid case before they bring something. Who knows what will happen here? But, the feds are definitely looking. We shall see.
NBC's Regina Waldrop. We will drop a link to the documentary in our show notes. We appreciate you dropping by CityCast Chicago. The South Suburban primary is February 25th. As Regina said, Henyard faces village trustee Jason House in that election. Whoever makes it through the primary will face an independent party candidate, Cassandra Hobson-Jordan, in the general election in April. But a Cook County judge recently ruled that Henyard's name will remain off the ballot for township supervisor after Thornton Township Democrats say she basically failed to comply with party rules for the nomination. She still has the option to run as a write-in candidate in the spring, which I suspect she definitely will do. One last thing, some good news. The Architecture and Design Film Festival from the Chicago Architecture Center kicks off this Wednesday and runs through Sunday, February 2nd. It'll take place at the Chicago Cultural Center and the Gene Siskel Film Center in the Loop. I'll drop a link for tickets in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.